thank you so much for joining the Telco AI Deep Dive today. I'm really looking forward to get your perspective on the opportunity for operators to invest in AI for new service revenues and for improvement of their own operations. But I guess just to set the table a little bit, everything I hear about AI from IBM is also kind of coupled to multi-cloud as these two sort of key technologies that underpin digital transformation. So just set the conversation up for us a little bit in terms of how you see operators taking advantage of those technologies and the complementary nature of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we in IBM, we think about four things. We invest heavily in four areas. One is hybrid cloud, automation, AI, and security. Those are the four things that we think about most of all. And of course, if we think about the CSPs and how they are running their businesses going forward, those technologies need to be at the very center of their future operations. If we also think a little bit to just where the industry is going right now, we've got two problems that CSPs have. And again, they're not new problems, but they've become maybe, even more highlighted just of late. One is maximizing CapEx for the highest return on invested capital. That's a clear one, and just making sure that that is used to the optimal level. The other one is operating at the lowest TCO, but it is also operating with the lowest environmental impact. So we must solve for those problems, and those technologies must address those two issues. I think the other thing is the CSPs have decided on a few other factors. One is the importance of an open ecosystem. They want to be able to run workloads across a hybrid cloud. I think they've shifted away from singular thinking to multi-cloud thinking, and they want to be able to run those things in a secure way. So those are the problems that these technologies have to think about. Now, I think about, in a couple of ways. One is if CSPs want to grow their business, they need to take managed services towards their enterprise clients, whether that typically a range of SDN type services. And there's the other element of that, which is, of course, we've got ever demanding B2C experiences that will be pushed up for. So again, what we'll need to make sure is that the performance of any part of the network, actually, whether it be the VNFs or the CNFs, or whether it be the application layer or layer 3 or a layer 1, whatever it happens to be, all of that needs to be running synchronously. So when we invested in AI and when we invested in multi-cloud, we were picking up on those particular problems. And where we see issues of service chains being pulled together, for example, we know that there are issues for the CSPs in terms of the way they have to manually configure and reconfigure different services across a multi-cloud array. Well, instead, when you've got a multi-cloud mesh, you effectively keep the connectivity points as you actually move workloads between different clouds. So that's a major area there. The second thing, of course, is that you need to use AI to constantly figure out where, of course, the closed loop automation potential is on the network side, but also on the customer experience side. That needs to be coming together as well. So as customers have different types of touch point within the CSP, they're able to run a consistency of services between the back office and the front office. So this is where these different technologies start to come together, and they start to offer complementarity to each other.
So I know everyone in our audience has probably at this point played with ChatGPT, with Midjourney, with tools like that, those trillion plus data parameter large language models. But I was hoping you could help us understand how you sort of take the opportunity of something like that and make it more curated for a particular business. How do you do that safely and effectively? And I think based on what I've been seeing, that involves leveraging your proprietary data in service of a kind of specific outcome. But what are you seeing?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. So let's be clear. I think generative AI is a defining moment. There's no question of that. But like all things, it takes us a while to figure out the technology. And so as ChatGPT came in, I think people started to, I don't think it was hype necessarily. I just think we became awakened to this massive potential of AI. And of course, then we started to figure out, well, where does it practically become implementable? I think the big difference that we're seeing right now, though, is that there is two types of AI. There is a consumer grade AI, and the consumer grade AI has definite applications, and it's great in certain instances. But you also then need to have enterprise grade AI as well. And consumer grade is great if you're not running, non-critical functions, or if you're doing general types of AI. But of course, there are issues that come along with that. There are issues of do you know where the data comes from? Do you understand the security behind the data? Do you understand? Do you appreciate whether it's bias or if there are drift? And there are general concerns of trustworthiness around that consumer level AI. Whereas if you actually look to enterprise grade AI, it starts foundationally with where you know where the data is coming from, and therefore you can trust it, and you can be more specific and unique in the way that you apply the AI because you know exactly where the data comes from. I think for CSPs going forward, and for the industry as a whole, I think the main opportunity is two things. One is finding ways to be willing to share privileged data. Yeah, so we talk about, so that a lot of the data was hidden behind firewalls, or it was within an organizational constraint, let's say. But now we're actually seeing as openness as a general concept is coming, sort of pervasive across the industry, the data fabric that you can actually build that underpins AI is becoming more accessible in ways that we've never seen before. So I think there's not only an opportunity within organizational silos within a particular organization, but even within a particular ecosystem. So I think there's huge opportunity for us in both domains. But I think if we work to less proprietary but privileged data, and then the openness within the privileged data, then you get to do really interesting things with AI.
So what do you see short term for operators in terms of how they target their investments, how they develop their strategies? And I would call back to those two problems you mentioned around maximizing CapEx and getting to the lowest TCO state as possible. And you also called out those parallel paths of internal facing automations and then consumer facing experience improvements. So just how do you see this kind of coming together?
Yeah, so again, we think about the use cases in four broad categories. We think about customer care, we think about IT and network automation, we think about digital labor, and we think about cybersecurity. And then we've got another one, which is others, because we just can't keep coming up with too many. But we're running something like in 330 use cases the last time I looked in telco, across all of the different, sort of domains and organizational functions and key processes that run inside of an operator. So there's lots and lots of opportunity. The question is, where do you start? And I think there are three main areas to start. One is tying together customer care and network experience so that customer experience becomes proactive and anticipates the needs and the issues. And the gaps between the SLAs and the OLAs that sit across the value chain suddenly become, or sorry, not suddenly, but become more harmonized. I think that's a huge change in the way that you can run customer care and network care and have them harmonized between organizational functions. That's opportunity number one. Second one is dynamic network operations and optimizations. And that really doesn't just come, actually, that can also include business operations. So we're thinking of everything from internal finance, HR, network operations, business operations. And you can actually look at different ways in which you can optimize away from mundane tasks, of course, and then you can increase the productivity. So whenever I'm thinking about productivity, I'm thinking greater output per unit measure of time. I think if we can, push AI and infuse AI into those processes, I think you democratize and you liberate a lot of clogged up processing. I think also within the industry, the opportunity for that is to integrate the working models with the NEPs. So let's, simple working example. If you're raising tickets today between yourself as an operator and you've got the tier 1 and the tier 2 functions that sit on the NEP side, integrating the workflows using the data fabric, like I explained earlier, and then integrating the workflows between the ecosystem players, you suddenly can start to generate insight and foresight on the way that the network is running, operating, but also needs to be running through CI/CD process as well. So I think that's the second one. And the third, which of course is the most exciting in many respects, is looking at dynamic selling. So of course we do a lot of selling today, but we should be looking at self-serve, and we should be looking at consumers so that they can optimize their own experience actually as they are making a touch point with the with the CSP, they can look at, are they actually having access to what is the best plan they should be on, what are the latest innovations that they can get access to. And that shouldn't involve human intervention. It should be that we use AI to figure out what is the current experience, how do you optimize that, and where in the future the consumer, whether it be B2B or B2C, should be applying themselves.
Yeah, in this kind of macro condition where operators are really struggling to grow, to come up with new sustainable lines of service revenue for 5G, this idea of network and customer, I think maybe gets lost. But if you kind of consider the network as a proxy for the customer experience, maybe that's a good place to put more attention. So a really good commentary on where to start with all of this. Earlier in our conversation, you mentioned this trend around virtualization and then taking these network functions, putting them into various cloud environments. And I guess I wanted to understand, if I look at most major enterprises today, they've got an articulated AI strategy, and in many cases, a good look at how they plan to use 5G or wireless connectivity over time. And a lot of it is, pushing out of the four walls of the business towards the network. And see operators doing the same thing. They're trying to, push compute, push connectivity out to the edge of the network, whether that's their own cell tower or radio site or whatever, or if it's the enterprise edge. So how do you get alignment there when you have these two parties that can absolutely work together, but are perhaps not fully thinking about what the other is doing?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think within the CSPs, they need to make them, let's say to make the AI most effective. They need to basically couple four different types of strategies, and that's just to get their own organization sort of, the phrase I like to use, congruent to strategy. Yeah, and if you are incongruent to business strategy, by definition, it means that you're working at lower competitive advantage than potentially your competition. So the four strategies that I think about, one is network strategy and openness. Yeah, which includes cloud strategy, of course, and it's essential that CSPs define and establish a dominant design point, which within their architecture that they move the ecosystem towards, and that becomes a rallying point for anybody that's playing with the operator. Yeah, so that's absolutely essential. And actually we can see a big shift in the way that the NEPs have been continuously moving towards that. So if we just look at the recent Red Hat Nokia announcement, for example, that was a great example of a vendor that has decided that hybrid cloud architecture is the way to go forward, and that they are becoming part of an ecosystem, and pervasively they're working towards a dominant design point on the CSP side. I think that's the first strategy. The second one is data strategy. And again, we talk about data strategies, but I'm not sure that we have data strategies that are pervasive across the CSP. I think you might find them within organizational silos. I think some are more mature than others, but you really need to make sure you have a harmonized strategy that serves as a bedrock for AI and informs AI in terms of policy, architecture, governance, security, those types of things. The third one is the AI and automation strategy. That must be informed by data and network and business strategy. Yeah, so you have an AI strategy that talks about where do you infuse, which data you're going to be using, how do you ensure that the efficacy of the AI is within certain guidelines, etc. So third one's the AI strategy. And the fourth, which is probably the most complex, is organizational strategy, because you have to ensure that every time you touch network data, AI strategies, that inherently you're going to be touching organizational and people strategies, because skill sets have to change, modes of operations have to change. CI/CD would be a perfect example of that. So as you mature on the first three strategies, that you're going to make an impact on organization. Tying those four strategies together and understanding that there is a direct relationship with all of them is what enables you to maintain your congruence to strategy. Once you've done that, and the same model actually applies to your enterprise customers. So you can take all of the learnings and all of the thinking that you do with that, you take that to your enterprise customers, and you can help them through their own journey in the same way. So actually, that's where ultimately the ecosystem and the customers meet in the middle.
So how is IBM, from both a software and a services perspective, helping operators do everything that you just described?
Yeah, first off, we relaunched Watson X. That has obviously been a massive part of our investments going forward. That allows customers to figure out how to actually create the AI, infuse the data, and then actually ensure that the governance is all aligned. So I think that's a huge, let's say, almost a plenary for them, a platform for them to be able to figure out how to generate AI. That's the first thing. The second one, of course, is our consulting organization has got the expertise to help customers think about the future mode of operation. How do they want to work? How do they want to envision themselves 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now? And then work backwards with a techno-economic case to effectively help customers say, what is the network strategy and the architectures, and therefore the other strategies that I talked about. So that's the consulting piece that comes to that. And of course, then with Red Hat, we're able to help customers through their hybrid cloud journey. So when you couple those things together, we've got a lot of opportunity for us to help customers transform their business.
Yeah, throughout this conversation, we've kind of referenced the need for a uniform data fabric and for the ability to monitor a public cloud, private cloud, edge cloud, even aspects of your customer's cloud. So point about Red Hat, well taken there, and maybe ties into a question here around Watson X. How do we think about it from a business perspective? I look at Red Hat. On the software side, it's been very successful for IBM, and then a lot of pull through into consulting. Would we expect something similar with Watson X?
Yeah, I think so. But I think that the key difference with Watson X is that we talk about it in a way that actually customers don't have to feel constrained about it. It is using our engine, but actually we can bring our own data, we can bring customers' data, we can go to open source, we can talk about the different ways in which you can capture the opportunity. We really are. IBM is very serious about trying to help customers democratize their own data, their own insight, their own analytics, and be able to actually get the best of what AI has to offer, but do it in a way that is trustworthy. So I think that's the big difference between that and say what I've seen in the market and others, where they're much more prescriptive around the way that they want AI to work for their customers.
So final thoughts here, Stephen, in terms of why operators need to be thinking about and executing on an AI strategy with all due haste. It feels urgent. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. And it is urgent. There's no question. And there is going to be two types of companies in the world. There'll be what we could call AI first companies. So those AI first are the ones that decide that AI is an inherently important, ordinary way of working within their business. And then there's going to be those that actually decide that it's an additional thing to their business. Those that are AI first are going to have significant competitive advantage in terms of cost, quality, customer experience, way ahead of the competition. So, I can't impress enough. Be an AI first company.
All right, Stephen. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts with us here at the Telco AI Deep Dive.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.